Hey folks, I don't remember when I last posted, but I'm not in my usual place. I actually flew out east to visit my grandma. She's actually out of the house right now, so I went to grab some food from what's now becoming one of my favorite restaurants. They only, I guess, have it, have this sort of chain of restaurants out here. So got myself a nice burger, some fries, and a drink, and just sitting in the car charging my phone because I only really have a a charge cord that works with the car or works with my laptop. I don't actually have the wall charger, fortunately, but so man, I don't know if I really want to talk about like Nofap this, Nofap that, because I'm just sort of like, doing that. It's and for the most part, it becomes sort of part of my day-to-day sort of routine. I guess you could say, just not doing that, generally speaking. Aside from those, two like major slip-ups, but anyways. Talk about, I guess I guess that's why I kind of call it Nofap Life, because it's more about like beyond just the process of not engaging in thus and such behavior, but coming back here visiting my grandma, obviously, like, you got the formalities, of like, you're greeting your 91, soon to be 92-year-old grandmother, and first time you see her, it just kind of hits you as to like, how much time has passed and how little time you probably have remaining with her, and she's my last living grandparent. You just see how she's aged, and how you've aged, and you get to talking about the family and all the things that have happened, and etc. And it just very rarely seems like there's a lot of like positive news or positive, anything going on, except for perhaps with myself, the one person who seems to be moving forward with life. And I get a sense of shame, feeling like I haven't done enough with my life. Obviously, I'm not going to discuss certain bad habits I've had, that I'm like, working on eliminating or have eliminated. When I talk about myself, I tend to, sometimes I will mention some stuff from work that kind of gets on my nerves or so, but I also try and talk about a bit of positive stuff relating to myself. But we get into talking about the family, and things come up, and it's sort of like, you get all these questions. Well, why is this the way that it is, etc., etc. And my family, particularly my father, and I got into, well, not just my father's, my mother too. Like, I really can't put it all on his shoulders. It's like it depends on the issue. It could be a 50-50 split. It could be 70-30. It could be 60-40. But there's this general sort of trend of or attitude of, we're going to keep everything under wraps. Save face, keep up appearances. We don't want to deal with the truth. We don't want to actually solve these problems. We don't want to take any accountability or responsibility for things. And as long as we can keep up appearances, it doesn't matter if the problems actually get solved. And I get into a bit of a yelling match with him a few minutes ago. Several minutes ago, but because I get here and I talk to my grandma, and they're all like, "Oh, what did you tell her? What did you tell her?" Right away, and it's just like, what can I tell? And even though she's told me like, that neither myself or herself can actually solve these problems, she's accepted that it's not really on her it's really not on me. It's on the folks who are involved. My mother, my father, and my sister. And honestly, like, so much of this stuff, this environment of abuse and mental illness and even like physical abuse, like verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, domestic abuse in general, mental illness, has been one of the main drivers for why, to bring it sort of back, I guess you could say, connected to Nofap, why I had such a problem, or have had such a problem with PMO. And obviously I'm not talking about that with my, grandma who's in her 90s, obviously, like, no. It's just that's not the way, that's not something to discuss, with your grandmother, obviously. Basic social skills there, basic social intelligence there. It's just not something you do. But between you folks and myself, like, that's one of the main reasons why I've had such a problem with it, because it was like a coping mechanism for so many damn things. And in sort of the evolutionary biology sense, I guess there's a coping mechanism for the fact that not only was I being confronted with all this trauma, but this trauma was getting in the way of me attaining what I need to attain as a man in order to be desirable to the opposite sex, such that I could solve the reproductive problem. And talking about this aspect with you folks, not with anybody else, in terms of my family or what have you, because they don't, like I said, my grandma, it's just not something to talk about. With my family, it's not just that they don't understand, they don't care, like I had to use this example to sort of explain, like, why, if I get asked certain questions about, like, my life, like, why did it take me so long to graduate from college? Well, okay, in order to answer that question fully, I'm going to have to reveal some things that my family probably doesn't want to have revealed, okay? I'm going to have to talk about my sister's cry for attention, fake suicide attempt back in, like, 2012, which caused me to fail a calculus-based physics class, which is the prerequisite for so many other courses, which then sent me back, I think I did the math, I think it was 2 years in terms of courses, but then 3 years in terms of transferring, because you had to apply a year beforehand, a year before the fall semester that you're trying to start at the full-fledged university. So let's just say 3 years. Send me back 3 years. And then you add into that, the additional years that I had to spend at the university. It's like, well, here's why it took me a decade to graduate my Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering, Unfortunately, Mom and Dad, I'm going to have to explain a few things if anybody wants to fully understand what the heck happened as to why it took me so long, or why I am the way I am, why I have the perspectives I have, or the perspective I have on different issues, This is why this is the case, etc., etc. And I sort of use that to illustrate that point, but apparently, even in relaying what I had said in the conversation, to my dad, he didn't seem to understand. That's why I got into a yelling match with him. I mean, like, how else am I to explain to someone who wants or needs to know, like my sister's mental health issues? How am I supposed to explain that? How am I supposed to explain, like, why I am the way I am, or why I will say or do the things I say or do without revealing a lot of these things, because I ended up, in as vague of terms as possible, revealing to my grandma my sister's claim of being sexually molested by one of our cousins. I ended up revealing that to her. And I did that in part because I was trying to sort of paint this picture that, from my perspective, being that a lot of the stuff that my sister is going through or has gone through is not made up. It's real, you know. Because, you know, my mom takes this to the nth degree, where she'll be like, "Oh, everything your sister's claiming, it's just made up. It's all in her head, and she's just doing this for attention." And da 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 da. And there's an aspect of that to it, but then there's the other half, which is no, things actually did happen. Now, does that make it okay for her to go over this line and do all these, self-destructive things, or to disrupt other people's lives? No, it doesn't. But at the same time, hey, here are the real things that actually did happen, and this is not being made up, and she did go through this trauma. Same thing with myself. But, it's just like, if I'm ever going to 150% get free of this whole PMO problem, for instance, I'm probably going to, quote unquote, take a page out of my grandma's book and let go of a lot of things. I'm not going to solve my family's problems. And, as my grandma told me, like, before I, traveled out here, she told me that probably the best thing I ever did was getting out of my parents' house and creating that distance between myself and them, because my family has a tendency of making their problems into other people's problems, and crossing people's boundaries, not even recognizing that they exist. You know the deal. I'm pretty sure folks out there who have dealt with abusive family members or partners, or etc. You probably know the drill, I would assume. I'm gonna have to be basically creating that distance. Like, once I am able to get back to my actual, place that I'm renting after this trip, and reestablish that, and not entangle myself with my family, because the way they've always done things is like they don't care about the effects of their actions. Of course they'll rip you to shreds over the fact that, you're only at this point in life, or you haven't gotten it all together, or why aren't you married and having kids, or blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, because of you guys, that's a large part of it. Not all of it. There's a half of it that's on me. That's like, hey, but you need to get some direction in your life, do the work, establish boundaries, enforce those boundaries, etc. Make sure you're associating with the right kind of people. Do the work. There's that half, But because if I let myself get entangled in that stuff again, I'll be nothing but an enabler myself. And both my parents have enabled my sister. My father's enabled my mother. I think I'm the only one who ever got to sort of break free of that sort of thing. And a lot of it was the fact that my dad was willing to kick my butt, so to speak, if I got out of line, or if I did something stupid, or so he was willing to yell at me, or discipline me or so. And because of that, I kind of got my act together to enough of an extent that I can, support myself and all that. I don't know if I think I actually discussed the latest episode with my sister, but it's one of the reasons why I wasn't able to really, contact my grandma at the time that I wanted to, in order to let her know that I was, flying out and be there by a certain time and all that. But, And just, I'm just getting some stuff off my chest. But anyways, my dad went out to see Top Gun Maverick, which, great movie. I'd highly recommend going and seeing it. It's a great Father's Day film, and great all-around film in so many different ways, But we had a big 2-3 hours away to go watch a movie, and my sister, she says, oh, she was so concerned thinking that we got into an accident or so, and it's just like, it took half an hour to 45 minutes to get to the theater, half an hour, 45 minutes to get back. The movie was, I think from the time the actual film, started itself, was like 2 hours and 17 minutes or so, and you think about the 5, 10, 15 minutes of commercials and trailers and all that beforehand, it's like, she clearly should have known we were going to be gone for a few hours. It's not that complicated. It's just her not getting to have my dad's attention, and she had to create some drama, and I went off on her because she was blowing up her phone. She even called the theater and called the security there and was asking where we were and when the movie blah 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 and it was supposed to be shown and all these things, and it was just and calling us in the middle of the movie, calling my dad in the middle of the movie, calling me as well, and calling both of us when we were driving home. And my dad's driving. He doesn't want to relinquish the keys to the car. So I'm like, okay, fine, you'll drive, but I'm gonna keep an eye on things. And if things get out of hand, you're going into another lane or what have you, I'll check you, so to speak, to make sure we get home safe. Or I might even have to force you to pull over and let me drive. But even in the midst of all this, okay, she's telling me she's worried about us getting into an accident. It's you're contributing to that by calling us and distracting my dad from the road and all this kind of crap. And when we got home that night, we had this big Yellfest. I went off on her, she went off on me, back and forth. It was one person saying something, other person responding, or vice versa. My dad got involved. I called her out on a lot of stuff. My dad actually kind of for the most part, took my side, and then she threatened, oh, she's gonna go and kill herself. And this was the second time that my dad did not fall for it. Last time when I was driving back, I basically had I got into this argument with her because she was trying to start a fight, and she was going to get her fight one way or another. And that last time, that was the time that it was the last time I think I was down there, and it was it led to me almost being a third of the way back to my place up north, 3 times in a row. And my dad called her bluff, and then he called her bluff this time, and then of course the next day in the morning she's all congenial and all this sort of stuff, and what have you, and it's just such BS, such garbage. But I'm having sort of a reevaluation in my life right now, having come out here and almost feeling I gotta explain the last 10 to 15 years and justify why things have been the way they've been and whatnot, and why my sister has these mental health problems, physical health problems, why I am the way I am, why I am where I'm at in life, and why I have my own mental health issues, and the same thing with my parents, and blah 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 blah. And then looking back on life, especially after seeing Top Gun Maverick, man, there were some scenes that really hit me hard. There was, I don't want to spoil it, but there was sort of a military funeral. I'm not going to say which character, I'm not going to say, what happened right before, etc. But they had sort of this 21 gun salute, as part of it, and they did that at my grandpa's funeral as well, and that hit me like a ton of bricks, that reminded me of my grandpa, and that, the piloting, the flying and all that, how back in the early 2000s, I tried to go into the military as an officer, and how things had fallen apart. And then when I got back to my family's place, which is where I basically had to go back to the retreat, back to kind of serve, regroup, if you will. All the things that happened there that basically like stalled me so much that it's not like I ever got a second chance at that. And that's probably been one of, if not my biggest regret, because I wanted to have a meaningful, purposeful life. I wanted to have, let's just be real, okay? This may not be, and it's probably not most people's experience in the military. Let's be honest. Most people's experience in the military is not one of adventure and thrills and all that. It's a lot of, everything I've heard from my friends has been, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, punctuated by moments of intense chaos, and like somebody sitting in their barracks, reading a book. They got their rifle, let's say, laying up against their bedpost or so, and they're reading a book. It's boring, quiet. Suddenly, boom. Something goes off, and you hear a bunch of gunfire, and they gotta grab the rifle and run out there, and throw the book down, take the rifle, get out there, and go wherever they're needed to repel some attack or something like that. But like I said, I wanted that purposeful, meaningful life where I actually accomplished something of meaning and value, be part of something bigger than myself. The thrill, the adventure of being a pilot or a flight surgeon or something of that nature. Obviously the whole NASA astronaut deal, but referring to that, funeral scene to really honor my grandfather, because one of, if not the greatest things that, he ever did in his life, and, it's like left an indelible mark, and it's been such that, we remember him not just as my grandfather, but, for all we know of him as, basically a war hero, was that he had served in the United States Navy during World War II. Just graduated from high school. Actually, I don't think I got to go to his graduation. It was just like, you're in the Navy now, son, and he went out to basic training, and I haven't seen his records yet. I'm working on, getting all the stuff together. I just basically need to email the National Archives personnel, and they put it in the queue, and I, get access to a digitized version of those records. But I don't know beyond the fact that he was an aviation ordnanceman in third class. What exactly he did in terms of like where he was, sent or so. Whether or not he ever ended up out in the Pacific, the list goes on. But just the memory of it and the photos of him in his uniform is like, I wanted to honor my grandfather, and I never really got to. Sorry, my dad's calling. I'll call him back in a bit. I'm just trying to get some stuff off my chest, and I obviously had a yelling match with him earlier, and I'm sure he's probably coming back at me again with more things, and don't you ever come back here, and if you come back here, well, we're gonna, blah blah blah. Here, take your car and get the hell out of here, and all these things. But anyways, I'm kind of in that sort of state of mind where it's like I'm looking up again, like, okay, what I gotta plan out for the next 6 months to a year in order for me to start this process of pursuing this dream one last time, so that I can at least kind of like be at peace with things, And a lot of it ties into why I at 35 have never been with a woman like that, why I'm not married, why I don't have kids, the whole sense of like unfinished business, and sort of a burden that I carry on my shoulders that I feel like I have to, sort of relinquish or resolve so that I can actually like feel like, okay, I can move into this next stage of life. But anyways, I'm probably just gonna head back to my grandmother's house. I was gonna go out to where my grandpa grew up, but I'm looking on the map, and I'm, Google Maps, and I'm kind of confused. Is it way over here, or is it way over here? Because I always thought it was like way out in the country. I just have to drive there with my grandma, because she like, she's from that day and age where like, you had to know how to read a map, you had to memorize directions and that sort of thing. And I'm from this generation where it's, hey, Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever, like, tell me where I need to go, with your satellite data and your magic. Anyways, that's it for now. I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching and thanks for hearing me out. Bye-bye.